All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Wiseman, and welcome once again to my gathering of geeks. Today, we are here with special guest Orjatsalo, who is known from Metal de Facto, from Bloody Hell. Maybe there's some other projects out there that I don't know about it. But what I have heard is that you are a geek.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. Define a geek, but however you define it, I think I fit the bill.
Hey guys, this is Wiseman again. Just wanted to let you know that I switched laptops at some point after recording this episode, and I lost the video file. So if you're wondering why this episode doesn't have any video, it's just because I lost the file. Sorry about that. I've replaced it with this photo by Juho Jokimies from one of their live shows, so do enjoy the photo. Sorry again for losing the file, and thanks for listening. Bye.
It's getting harder to define these days what exactly a geek is, I think, because being a geek's so much more mainstream than it used to be.
Yeah, I suppose so. It was a bit different in the 80s or in the early 90s. That geek were certain types then. Of course, I was a bit weird then because I'm tall and I had long hair already then. So people were a bit confused about this, that I play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and this kind of stuff, and spent all my time with computers. But back then it was a bit different scene. It was like Amiga 500 and this Commodore C64.
Nice.
It's come a bit from those days.
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit, yeah. Graphics are a little bit better. Not much, but a bit.
Are you a console gamer, PC gamer? Do you play many games these days?
These days, not that much, actually. I bought my first console last year.
Ooh.
I bought an Xbox then, and you're like, I have to say that I haven't really played that much with it, except Witcher 3, which is absolutely wonderful game. It was like, yay, this is actually fun, because usually with consoles, I get confused with the thing this like where you controller. Yes, there is no keyboard, there is no mouse, so it's confusing. And it took me some time. It was like absolute terror in the first couple of days when I was playing Witcher, because I kept killed on everything. Everything killed me. But I learned to be better in it, and I also learned that you can change this like difficulty level much easier at that point.
I for sure had to do the same. I'm the full opposite, by the way. If I try to play video games on a computer without a controller, I'm like, what do these buttons do? I'm so confused. But when I started to play The Witcher, I was like, I don't even, what? No, this is insane.
I didn't understand half of the stuff what you're doing, and you're like, how you roll, how you block, how you do it. Like even the smallest enemies killed me immediately because I didn't know how to avoid their hits. I was just hitting them like, die.
Yeah, it doesn't work in The Witcher, no matter how much you try and just smash your way through stuff. Unless you're on the easiest difficulty, it's not going to work.
Even then you get killed, actually. I do.
I did have to go down to, I believe it's story mode.
Yeah.
And I still got my ass walloped several times, I think.
Yeah. And there was this that you're like, I didn't know that the game doesn't actually scale the enemies. So I didn't know what the hell this like a red skull on top of the enemy means. So I got really decimated by some enemies in the beginning because they were way over level for me. And like I didn't even get a chance to do anything and died immediately. And then one of my autosaves was right next to this enemy, so it was like and the previous save was like 2 days ago.
no.
So it was a bit difficult day that day, but I managed to pull through. I managed to flee.
It's if you walk too far south in that game, which is weird because it feels like you're supposed to spend the first half of the game or so in the south. But if you walk too far south, then it's just fuck zone. Everything's going to mess you up. And those auto saves.
Yep, I went there also, and I was level 10 and everything there was at least 20. So it was really difficult. Well, now I'm level 45 or something, so fuck everything that comes at me. I kill you.
Are you the kind of player who likes to go for the main quest, or do you like to kind of explore, or do you side quests first, or what's your kind of way of gaming?
I'm like this. I want to see everything, actually. I usually do go everywhere. I sometimes even forgot the main quest. Go and explore everything, and then it's like, what was I supposed to do?
Which of these quests is main?
Yeah. And it's with a game like that, also, Baldur's Gate was like that there was so much to do. All kind of side quests, and you like different characters. You you're on your this team that you could go different side quests with them, and at some point you were like, what was I supposed to do?
At least it's not so bad as Skyrim, where the main quest wasn't even that interesting compared to the other stuff most of the time.
I haven't yet played Skyrim, actually, because, like I said, I bought the console last year. I bought Skyrim. I want to try it, but it's a bit overwhelming to start it, because I know it's going to take a lot of time.
I think that becomes more problematic as you get older. That I've been finding the time to dedicate to these big open world, huge story, side quests, massive games. It's taking a lot more out of me to decide just to start playing one nowadays, because you know that it's going to be like 100-hour investment at least or something. So
yeah, I know that's this COVID was the reason why I bought the Xbox, basically. And I've had time sometimes now to play. At the moment, no, again, but in the summer time anyway, I don't like that much sitting inside and playing with the console or computer. But probably next winter I will try Skyrim, because I'm almost finished with The Witcher now. It took a lot of time. I think I started before Christmas.
Were you did you play any of the earlier Witcher games as well, or was this your first one?
No, this was the first one.
Okay.
For me.
That's the same here.
Previous ones are good also, but this one was it's difficult to go back when you start from a newer version, and then you go to the older ones. It's usually a bit like, what the hell?
Yeah. I've heard it said that the second one doesn't quite hold up to the first and the third, just with the gameplay, like the battle system and also the decision making, because as far as I understood, a lot of the decisions you make in the first game have really long reaching consequences that come way later in the game. So the kind of good versus evil path was really unclear in the first one. And I think they came closer to that with the third one from what I understood, but I can't say for sure.
Yeah. I know that in the third one, how many endings there were? There were really a lot of them. You combination, how you can end at 20 something or something like that. I just by accident went with the good one, I suppose. It's in the main game, because there's still this extension parts that I haven't played. I played the main game. In my version, Ciri became a Witcher, which is, I suppose, it was the happy ending.
I think that's the one I got as well. So yeah. I've heard that you can make her emperor too.
Yeah,
but
there's that also. But I
haven't tried that.
Yeah, and then there's a version where she dies, I suppose, and I think there is this that Gerald also dies in this version. In the end.
How much time do people need to dedicate to find all these endings? To experience everything.
Yeah. Well, it's good that good that some people have that time.
Yeah.
You can at least check what is the possibilities, because I know that it's going to take some time if I ever want to play it again, because I know how time consuming it is. Of course, there was still a lot of stuff that I didn't find in it, and I screwed up in the beginning, some stuff that I lost some quests because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, I think when I finished, I kind of immediately restarted restarted like a new game plus and played it, I think, up until you finally meet up with Siri again. And then I thought, okay, now I'm really like reset for my second playthrough. I don't need to go through the basics again, but then here's where I can move on. And then retired the game for the time being so that next time I get the craving, I can jump in somewhere fun. Did you watch the show?
Yeah, I watched it. Yep.
How'd you
I
like
haven't
it?
read the book, but I watched the show. The show was actually, I think it helped that I played the game, because it was a bit easier to follow it. At least I knew who the characters are mostly, and this that I wasn't so confused about this time hopping what it has.
Yeah.
It was a bit confusing, but then you started realizing, okay, now they're in this year, now they're there, now they're there, and I think it has potential. I hope that the second season is a bit better.
Hmm.
It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. So, a bit mixed feeling.
At least I've read the short story books and maybe one of the books, and I think it's fairly true to the stories. The original fans who read the books haven't been too disappointed with the show, at least as far as I've understood. But the weird time jumps have been, even as someone who read the stories, I was like, wait, what? Where are we? What?
Yeah.
These don't happen at
going
the same time. This child isn't even born yet.
Yeah. That was the thing in the beginning. Okay, then you started to grasp it, that it's hopping in time and it's showing different events that lead into this.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Let's see how it goes next season. I suppose it's gonna come out next year or something.
Something like that. I've seen kind of pre-advertising that the second season is coming, but who knows what that means?
Well, nobody knows. It's also this COVID that it changes the schedules and so many things that it's a bit difficult to keep up with what's going to happen and where and what is released when and these kind of things.
Oh, and everything gets shifted and postponed these days too. So, were you much into anime when you were young? There's kind of a differentiation there, because there's kind of the animes that no one knew were anime when they were young, like Pokemon or Dragon Ball Z or Silver Fang or stuff like that. And then there's the animes that are, more like Naruto or One Piece, and then all of the more modern stuff as well. But I'm meaning more like the cartoons that you didn't know were animes.
Yeah, I watched what's it called, Silver Fang, and this Ginga Densetsu, Ginga Nagare Gin.
Yeah.
And I watched it, even though the Finnish version of it was a bit cut. It made no sense at all, actually, most of the times, because they took a lot of this violent parts out of it.
Okay.
There is at the end, when there is this a battle with Akakaputa's army, there is really not an army or anything in Finnish version. It's just a couple of bears and that's it. And suddenly Akakaputa is dead. They didn't even show this the flying fang thing. Or these. It's it doesn't make sense at all, actually. I remember when I got a bit older and watched this original Japanese version, I was like, oh, now it starts to make sense. These things. It was a bit different experience in that sense, but yeah, Pokemon, I was never that much into it. Came a bit later. I was too old for it at that point when it came out, and it looks like I've always been into wrong time with Pokemon, or wrong place, wrong time. Never really got into it. They started showing Dragon Ball Z and this kind of stuff also here in TV. I watched it, I think they also like messed up with the episodes because the story didn't make much sense. I think they started it from the middle or something like this. So also with this was this that when you didn't have possibility to get the original versions and you watch them from TV or you bought the VHS or DVD from somewhere and it was like a cut version of it and everything, and they were really weird. I remember. Now when I've seen the full versions, I'm like, okay, now it makes much more sense. All of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never really been that much into it. I like those, some of them. But I think it was actually this like a childhood experience. Like Japanese cartoons that make sense at all. It stayed even then, but mainly even though it was the fault of this like a Finnish company that cut it and you like put it child friendly version of it.
Yeah, we had one of those in North America too that was, I can't remember what they're called, but they're kind of legendary for kind of cutting everything that made it good and made it make sense. So by the time they would get through with these animes, there was kind of no logic left behind usually. And I don't know, like it's very weird. And then you can kind of compare it to these shows that, at least Dragon Ball back in the day when Goku was a little boy.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever cut that very much, but on the flip side of that, it was one of the earliest shows I ever recognized that had an ongoing story. And when I was little, I didn't, watch TV consistently at any given time. So it was really interesting, but also really confusing, especially because there were some characters, I forget who the guy's name is, but he looks exactly like Goku, but older. And I could never remember if he was Goku or if he was old Goku, or if I didn't even know if I was watching Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z back then. So it was just vastly confusing.
Yeah, I know the feeling also. Like back in the days when you were watching something from TV and you missed like an episode of something that had this like a story going on, and then it got even more confusing. We live in a much better time nowadays when you can just like pick the episodes and watch them and okay. I think actually now what Disney is doing, Disney Plus is doing this, that they're showing like new episodes once per week. That's actually kind of nice way because they create this that you have to wait for it. It sucks, but it's also nice in that way that you have this feeling that you're anticipating something. But okay, new episode is coming on Friday.
Yeah, it's got its own charm in a way. It's frustrating, but there's something still to that waiting time where you get to savor and think and theorize. You're not just gifted what happens next right away. You get to chew on it a while before.
Yeah, and read the internet, all the stupid theories about it, that how people are like, oh, you never read the comics, you wouldn't understand.
Well, that's a perfect way to segue into the MCU, I think, because that's just so huge. And I have been told that you're a fan. So
yeah, sort of. I've been reading Marvel comics since 80s. And I've read most of the classics. Of course, we had a very, very limited selection in Finland, what you could get at that time. So it was mainly like Spider-Man and X-Men that were popular ones. Of course, we had some Avengers stuff here also. And then there were like these specials, what they did like a couple of times per year when they published something new, like this more obscure characters, for instance, like Adam Warlock or something like this. And actually, with MCU, in the beginning I was a little bit against it, like this movie, because the previous ones were really bad, most of them.
Like those old movies.
Yeah, old movies, and the first Spider-Man movie is okay. It's was it 2000 or something when it came out?
The Sam Raimi with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah. Yes.
Not the Andrew Garfield ones; those are pretty bad.
I watched it. I don't know
Don't bother.
about that. I've heard that they're not that good, so I decided not to watch them because they're not like in any of these continuities that I'm watching, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter for me. But when there was Iron Man and these, at first I decided I'm not going to watch them because I was like totally against it, even though I like the character from the comics. Then I think it went like 2010, 2011 or whatever. I can't remember. And I watched, no, actually 2012, because that's when Avengers came out. I was first like, should I watch it? Because it's like, okay, maybe it can be interesting. And then I was like, okay, Joss Whedon you like directed it, and I liked his work with Buffy. And I suppose now you can't say it anymore that you like his old work because of his current doing. But he still did very good stuff back in the days,
He
even
did.
though apparently as a person he's not the nicest one.
Yeah.
But then I decided, okay, I'll give it a watch. It kind of feel like I was like, okay, this is actually pretty good that they managed to do their own thing, but still like respecting the characters somehow. Of course, everything is a bit nerfed down. It's because it's difficult to make this like scenes when there are people who can lift mountains, basically, this kind of stuff. The fight between Hulk and Thor is really like nerfed down from what it can be.
Yeah.
Okay, they showed it in Ragnarok a bit, how it could be.
Yeah.
But it's at that point I decided, okay, I go back and watch this that came before. And they're not actually like, they're even movies. Movie-wise, they are pretty good movies, some of them. Well, Iron Man 2 is not very good movie. But, and Thor is...
3? Ooh, dear.
Yeah. And Thor 2, for instance, is also bad. It has its moments, but it's like, I don't know how they managed to make Malekith, who is in the comics one of the most interesting characters. They managed to make him like completely flat and nothing. Like you just forget that he even exists. And there is not like this real sense of like threat from him. Okay, yes, very imposing, blah, 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 beat Thor a bit. But that happens every time anyway in the beginning. The villain has to show that they're powerful.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a 2-hour movie if they would beat the villain in the first act.
Yeah. One of the greatest things about the Avengers movies is that even now, of course, they were still very much finding their way with the early movies, but even now it's still kind of like Iron Man is Iron Man versus Iron Man, you know. And it seems to be kind of like Black Panther is fighting Black Panther. They're mostly kind of fighting guys with more or less their own powers. So it's kind of fun to see Avengers where you start getting these almost like kind of nerd fights where people go like, oh, who would win in a fight? Thor versus Hulk or something like that, and you actually finally get to see it played out a little bit and see what it would be like, even if it's only just a taste.
Yeah,
And
it was.
It played out well. Like the first one was a lot of fun too.
It was supposed to like I remember I was blown away. I watched it like 2 times immediately because I was like, for the first time you're just watching, second time you're starting to like, okay, this happening there, that. You're like, this is a reference to these comics, and okay, interesting. They played this thing there. And yes, and then they had some issues actually. A funny thing that Avengers was great, and then after that it took them a little bit time to get back into this. Like Guardians of Galaxy managed to pull it back together because it was starting to go a bit weird direction. For instance, Age of Ultron was a bit of a disappointment. It has also its moments, but how they made Ultron is like, in the comics, he is like the scariest character there is because it takes over fucking planets in minutes. If it needs to. For instance, like the original Age of Ultron in the comics, he destroys Earth in a couple of days. Basically, all the heroes are dead. everybody is dead. So they have to revert to this, well, the good old time travel thing in that sense in this one. But it's actually an interesting story in the original one when they go and kill Hank Pym. So he cannot create Ultron, but everything goes even worse at that point, of course, because that's how it goes. Don't mess with the timelines.
Oh, interesting. So I didn't actually know Hank Pym created Ultron, because the Ant-Man, like his role kind of overall was pretty small in the general MCU. So
Yeah, in MCU, yes, it's very small, but like in the comics, he's of course because he's one of the original Avengers there.
okay, yeah, of course.
I think actually I think Ultron was created in the 60s or 70s, actually. I think it's around issue 50-something of original Avengers was run. And it's made like this, that Ultron actually hypnotizes Hank Pym when he's created, so he cannot remember that he created Ultron.
Oh, weird.
And the first time they meet Ultron is actually already version number 5 of Ultron. So he's been like upgrading himself a long time there in the comics, and then strikes. And he actually, well, they put it in the comics because, you know, in the MCU, there's like the original one, Ultron frames job is the butler of the Avengers in his stead to be like the actual villain. Of course, he hypnotizes Jarvis in there, but they did this in the Age of Ultron also in the MCU. They put this like Ultron attacked Jarvis, which was artificial intelligence in that one.
But it's interesting the nods that they give to this stuff that the average watcher like would have no idea about.
Yeah, there is this like Easter eggs, a lot of them to find if you read the comics and this kind of stuff. Of course, I haven't read all of them, so there's probably much more that I didn't even notice. But this was funny, this Jarvis thing, how they played that one that you like.
Yeah, I've heard also that kind of the inverse of what you were saying before, but Guardians of the Galaxy was, as far as I understood, kind of a legendarily lame comic book, but they gave it some good life with the movie.
Yeah, I think actually the funny thing is that I'm pretty sure that the Marvel MCU movies are that good as they are because they didn't have their A-list characters. They had sold Spider-Man, they had sold the X-Men, which are the two of their most famous franchises.
Yeah.
The most popular one. So they were stuck with this like Iron Man and like
Captain America.
Captain America's, I suppose, somehow famous, but he wasn't that popular, I suppose, in these times. And then like Thor he's always been a favorite of mine, but that's because I'm from this region of the world.
Yeah.
So for us, like these kind of things are obviously interesting. Of course, we're also pissed off that they like are butchering most of the these things, but that's understandable in that sense. They tell their own versions of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happens. Most fantasy comes from myths, anyways. So
yeah, that's true. And but then I think this actually made this like Marvel the movie department work harder because they couldn't just rely on the popularity of the characters. They had to make them something. And I think that's why they learned it with Iron Man and these like Avengers movies. That okay, we have there's like a capability to make these characters that were not popular in comics or well known even in comics, and we can just take them and make them into something if we do the story well enough.
Yeah.
And I think they're continuing this now with this Eternals and these kind of things, that they were never that popular. Of course, like every Marvel fan knows about them, but I don't seem to recall that they were ever that popular.
Yeah, it's fun to also see some of these things that, you know, have been conceptualized so long ago, actually, like getting a new coat of paint and getting a breath of fresh air again after coming out of the vault. Doctor Strange was one I'd never heard about. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed seeing it, but it does also show some of those traits where the MCU stories are a little bit more about the origin story and don't have a strong enough villain. They're all just kind of a little bit generic bad guys, and I've appreciated that they've stepped up their bad guy game kind of in more recent movies, at least.
Yeah, they did. It's I think the problem with Marvel and MCU is these bad guys that it looks like in MCU they often careful there. They often kill the bad guy actually, or you get rid of him, because in the comics it's always like a long game. Nobody ever really dies there. Well, some characters do, but it's like very rare that some character stays dead or dies for good. Because there's always some way to bring them back. If they're popular, there's always a way to bring them back. But yeah, Doctor Strange was, I think it was actually a pretty good movie in many ways. Of course, Dormammu is a bit weird villain also included this. I don't know if they will use him again, because he's like a recurring thing in the comics. I have no idea actually how they do. I think they should actually play this like a longer game sometimes with the villains that they manage to escape or something, or you can see them machinating the things behind. Like they did with Thanos in this, that you could see him from the first Avengers movie, you could see that he's going to be the main villain. It took them 10 years to get there, but
it was a good game plan. Although I confess that Endgame disappointed me.
Yeah, it's like how much they build up to it. And actually, Infinity War had great moments in it. Of course, there was some really stupid stuff in it. But for instance, this battle in Wakanda, it annoys me so much. It's like, come on. There should be the best commanders in the world, and there should be like the most advanced military groups in the world, and then they fight like fucking Romans in the Roman Empire. Like, what the fuck is going on? And even the Romans held formation. They didn't.
Yeah, it's a weird moment, because you're seeing some people who are like basically god level powerful combined with people who are like god level tech, and they're just losing to numbers.
Numbers don't, like the firepower what they had there at their disposal. They just opened the fucking barrier and shoot them all down.
Yeah,
they had the firepower to do that. Why they didn't use it?
Yeah, I don't know.
They had Air Force in this Black Panther movie. Wakanda had Air Force. Where were they in this fight? I know that they were building it story-wise to this when Thor enters the battlefields, that he can like swing the tide of the battle. But still, and that's a great moment. I love this when Bifrost hits down, and then you can see like how Thor comes there, and you're like, I think this like old saying, like mighty in his wrath, is like very appropriate on that one, because he's pissed off and he's destroying anything in his path at that moment, and nothing can hold against him.
Yeah.
Even 6 Infinity Stones are not enough against him. And that was fucking stupid. Also, why Thanos needed to do this. The Infinity Stones don't work that way. You control them with your mind. You don't need physical gestures.
Yeah.
The snap was in the comics, it was like a dramatic gesture. He did it because of drama.
I think, didn't they even like say it was a metaphor initially, that he could do this in the snap of a finger, and then somehow the snap became the thing that they were trying to prevent him from doing.
Yes. And it becomes a little bit like childish that he is supposed to be, with the Infinity Stones, Thanos or anyone who is holding them is omnipotent and omniscient. So it's basically impossible to do anything against them. At least that was in the comics. Like, Thanos fought the whole fucking Marvel universe in the comics and won.
Yeah.
With the god. There was only two two who didn't participate. It was this the Living Tribunal and the One Above All. Living Tribunal currently would lose against Infinity Stones. He might, but he can also reverse their power. So it's like nobody knows how that would go. But in the original comic, the heroes were able to fight Thanos because he was using only 1% of his power.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to impress Mistress Death.
Yes.
With his worry that he's fighting. He gives the heroes a fighting chance. Well, they literally had none. He just slaughtered them all. But there was actually, I think they took this one from the comics to the movie also. There is a point when Thor gets pissed off in the comics and fights with full power against Thanos. He manages to beat him down for a second. Hulk and Drax with their full power. You've seen this pimp slap picture probably, where Thanos slaps them both. And they're nothing to him, but Thor managed to put him down for a second. Then he turned Thor into glass and shattered him. And then after the heroes were done, then the cosmic entity started fighting with Thanos in it and basically almost destroyed the universe in that one. So it was a bit different fight in the original comics than in the movie. But of course, it's very difficult to do that kind of a thing because it starts to get so abstract.
Yeah, I had read about the Lady Death as well, that she seemed to be more or less completely left out of this. There's some theories, that some people could have been her, but the way Thanos was dealt with in Endgame, it seems like those weren't very likely to just be included at all.
No, I just omitted her, because they haven't shown really much of these, the cosmic entities of Marvel in the movies. Okay, they mentioned the Living Tribunal in this Doctor Strange movie. And of course, Dormammu was in it. He's, I suppose, one of those Celestials they mentioned. But those are still, they haven't talked about Eternity. They haven't talked about this, Galactus or this kind of. And Galactus can be very difficult. Of course, there are people hoping that he would be a villain at some point. Or Mephisto. They were really expecting Mephisto in this WandaVision. I was also expecting, because they were cleverly building this, the devil is in the details kind of things there.
Yeah.
And then you started expecting that, yes, maybe there is, maybe he is involved in it. I hope it could still be that he was. They can still show it like that, but of course it was Agatha all along.
How did you feel about, or did you hear any good theories that outdid, I guess, Endgame? Because I had ended up hearing quite a few theories that were so good that kind of what I was given in the end was a disappointment, just kind of compared to what the fans had come up with and some of their ideas.
Yeah, I've read some of those. I can't actually remember any of those. I was just trying to think which was the good ones, but I remember, of course, there was after Infinity War, there was so much of these different theories of how it's going to be, what is going to happen, and to maybe we would get Adam Warlock in it or something like this, because they teased of him already. Or they teased about Beta Ray Bill also there. Of course, they in Infinity War they teased about Beta Ray Bill also about this Stormbreaker, because that's Beta Ray's Bill hammer. And then in this in Endgame they are actually killing Corbinites. It's there in was it in the script or was it in some commentary or whatever? There is this when Gamora saves Nebula there in this back in when they went back in time, and there is this that they were fighting Corbinite warriors there. So basically, probably Beta Ray Bill was there, but what happened? And you can see his statue in this in the Ragnarok, that he was one of the champions in this. planet where they are in Sakaar.
I think one of the best ones that I had heard was that Loki was not dead, but Loki was posing as Bruce Banner. So
yeah, I heard that one.
that was a really great theory, and I was really disappointed when that wasn't true because I don't know what the logistical reasoning for them doing Hulk's backstory off screen kind of. I don't know if that had to do with the weirdness around the old Hulk movies or something, but the character decisions made around Bruce Banner didn't make any sense really in Infinity War, but they did make sense if he was Loki in disguise. And to have that not be the truth in the end was really kind of a letdown, but I guess that's the risk when you watch theories, that if they're not true, they could be better than what happens.
Yeah, that's actually true. That it was Banner and Hulk both were out of character.
Yeah.
In this when they were explaining that Hulk was afraid or something, Hulk is not capable of being afraid, usually. I was just thinking what they were trying to achieve with it. That they had probably some goal in mind, but there's been a lot of this complaints about in this comic circles about this, that the Russo brothers don't really know what to do with Hulk. It seems to be pretty accurate. It's like they are more like using Hulk as a standard for this, that how strong a villain is, and as a comic relief, basically, Banner and Hulk.
Yeah, and that's kind of a shame because they had a lot of interesting storylines going on with Hulk. His Banner and Romanov's kind of interesting romance that they started there, just kind of at the end and never became anything, and then just suddenly jump 5 years later and Hulk's fine, he's cool, he's like half man, half Hulk, and totally okay with himself suddenly. Like, it was too much of a change for me to believe without seeing it happen, I suppose. So I was just weirded out by it.
Yeah, I remember in the movie when it happened, I was like, what? Okay, yes, Professor Hulk is a thing in the comics, but basically they're just like, okay, he became Professor. That's it.
Yeah. He goes from like this guy who's trying to escape humanity to a guy who does escape humanity and somehow finds himself on a totally different planet, only to just come back and be totally normal.
Yeah. He spent some time there. Time, like they said, the time works differently in Sakaar. So apparently he spent some time there. That could change him a bit. And these kind of things. And anyway, like in the original Sakaar, when Hulk was in Sakaar in the original comics, that's a totally different story. It's like it leads to World War Hulk.
Oh dear.
So it's like this, well, basically the story is like this. Some Marvel heroes form this like Illuminati, it's called. That they decide that Hulk is too much of a threat, that he needs to be dealt with because he's always out of control. Well, they try to send him to a peaceful planet which has like primitive life, and he can enjoy the peace there and live the rest of his life in peace. Basically, well, Hulk is immortal, so live the rest of the eternity. And Hulk, of course, smashes the spaceship and then gets blown into Sakaar. And gets there as a gladiator, like it's a long story. And then one of Hulk's friends in Sakaar actually blows up. There's like a nuclear reactor from the ship that he came there. And Hulk thinks that it was a bomb planted by the Illuminati. So he comes back to Earth to revenge everything. And he basically defeats every Marvel hero. There is like one even fight. It's when Sentry comes against him. But Sentry is also like an interesting character because he has this like well, Tony Stark comes to ask him to help with Hulk at that point. But they cannot deal with Hulk. It's too much for them. And Sentry is the only one who is like strong enough. Thor is not available, so they need to go to this one. And Sentry is just that he doesn't want to do anything because he's a schizophrenic, and he has real issues with his power because he's too strong. And he watches TV. All of this comic around there, you're like fighting for their lives against Hulk, and Sentry is watching TV. Basically, at the final moment, he's like, okay, he needs to step in. Then he says, time to play God. And then they basically destroy New York when they're fighting Hulk and Sentry. And it ends into this that they hit Hulk with this like Tony Stark satellite with lasers and managed to turn him back to Banner. Well, at that point, he was like so angry that when he was walking, it like caused tectonic plates to crack and that kind of thing. So it's like, it's a bit different story in the comics how it went with Sakaar.
Is Marvel as bad at the kind of... Now that I'm thinking of it, I'm actually talking about Spider-Man, which is, of course, Marvel, because there's the Spider-Verse, multiverse theories and things like that. So I guess that's all Marvel stuff, too, because he's all in that world as well.
Yes, and now he's like, they finally integrated Spider-Man into Marvel, and I suppose they're gonna go with this multiverse thing now, because the next Doctor Strange movie is called The Multiverse of Madness. So I suppose and apparently, I don't know what they're gonna do with the next Spider-Man movie, because about the reports who are cast there is Tobey Maguire in it. There's this, I can't remember his name, Dr. Octavius, and these kind of things, that they're taking the actors from these old movies into it. So they're apparently going to retcon it somehow, that it's like everything was in the multiverse, that they're just different versions of Spider-Man, different realities.
Interesting if they choose to go that way, because I guess they kind of did that already in Endgame with the like time loop reality sort of thing, but they teased the kind of multiverse in Spider-Man, but then it was all the Far From Home, was it?
Yeah, the newest one. Yeah,
they teased it, but then they said, not really.
Not really, yeah. That was actually, when they started, and when they even used this like a code name, what Marvel uses for this, like certain Earth 616 and these kind of things. Like, okay, are they really going to go this route now? But then it was like, no. Haha, suckers. Don't believe everything that you.
Yeah. Nope.
well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Looks like they're going to go still somehow into that direction.
Have you seen the Enter the Spider-Verse cartoon movie?
I haven't. I've seen a little bit of it. Like, I've been meaning to watch it, but it's like I have certainly like, at least it's I don't like that much of these like cartoon versions of these Marvel movies or something. It's like, I don't know why. I suppose because some of these Marvel cartoons when I was a kid were not that great. So it kind of stuck in my head that I don't want to watch these cartoon versions of them.
My significant other has been getting the Finnish Spider-Man comics for most of his life. And I think Into the Spider-Verse is his favorite Spider-Man movie of all of them, I think. So from Spider-Man fans, I've heard very good things. I just thought it was entertaining. It was a lot of fun. I liked kind of... I don't know if you've ever seen the show New Girl, but the character Nick from that show is the same guy who plays one of the Peter Parkers, and he's basically kind of the same character, which is just weird to see if you've ever seen New Girl.
I haven't seen it, so please tell me.
The character of Nick is kind of this weird guy who has great ideas sometimes, but is mostly kind of this loser slack off a little bit kind of guy.
Okay.
So it's funny to see Peter Parker through that lens.
I was actually just today reading this, the new What If from Marvel. It's like this, that what if Spider-Man had continued to use this like the black suit that he had in the 80s, the symbiote that became Venom. That what if he never got rid of it, that what he would have been continuing to use it. And to merge with the symbiote. And that's interesting because it gets like a darker take on this. He kills Hobgoblin there, he kills Kingpin, he kills this like Shocker, kills Scorpion basically on the first 2 issues. And he doesn't hold back at all. That's like the one thing that has been established in the comics is that Spider-Man is always holding back. That he's never fighting with his full power unless it's like really, really necessary. And there have been few cases that they've shown in the comics and this that when he's fighting with full power, he's actually pretty unstoppable. He's very difficult to defeat. And now when he's merged with Venom, so that his power is even greater, so he just basically hits Kingpin with one hit and he's dead.
Plus a little less moral code probably to work with. That makes sense. I could see it.
Yeah, he's like he's not burdened with moral code, and he's thinking about it that things are I should do this and this, but Venom is telling him that those are concern for humans, not for us.
Elevating him to we don't need to worry about them. Have you seen the Venom movie that came out in the last year or two? I don't think it was done by the MCU, was it? It was.
No, it's Sony. Sony basically Spider-Man characters, which Venom is. But they are not saying that it's not part of MCU. I think there was some references to MCU in the movie. I can't remember what they were, but I remember that there was this, that okay, there is a possibility to merge them. But they left it open. They made it so that they can bring Venom into it these companies, if they get money from it, they will do anything.
Disney is such a funny company these days too, because you can see on one hand that they're really starting to care a lot more about what kind of stories they're releasing. The children's movies like Moana, less romance. I think that was the first movie where they redeemed the bad guy. And it seems with Marvel, they've taken a lot of the feedback and, tried to work with it and make the stories a little bit better these days. So I appreciate that they're opening up and getting more modern ideas and being tolerant and things like that. At the same time, you go watch Star Wars. They haven't been taking too much care with those stories, I suppose. And then they're still, of course, just grabbing cash with their Disney plus or whatever they're offering nowadays. So
I have to say that the Star Wars movies, there was a little bit hope when this the first one of these was a sequel trilogy came. I was like, okay, they might be able to do something with it. It's not bad, it's not good. It's basically New Hope again, but
with less personality.
Yeah. But then after that, it was like a fucking train wreck. Just The Rise of Skywalker is a horrible movie. It's how can anybody release it? That's for me. You should be able to see yourself that this is complete bullshit. Don't release it. Just to tell that we need to reshoot a few parts and we'll get back to you in a couple of years when we brought a new movie.
So funny because I feel like all you would need to do to get a good Star Wars movie is just go online and read some fan stories, some theories, just shuffle them up and you could come up with something 10 times better than what those movies ended up offering, which is really a shame. There was a lot of interesting seeds of things in there that grew a little bit and then
they managed to redeem themselves a bit with Mandalorian, but I think it's more about this that Jon Favreau had to basically like a free reign to do what he wants with it or something like this. And what I've noticed from him that he is actually a good storyteller. So it would be nice that there would be these people who actually like tell a story and not just like to woohoo, we have this multi-billion-dollar franchise where we can milk cash as much as we want.
Yeah, Luke Skywalker's blue booby milk thing was so bizarre.
Yeah. And it was also like a little bit, anything what Luke was doing there was out of character. It's like, what? Why he was suddenly like that? And then suddenly he comes back because Mary Sue comes there and like convinces him the Force projects himself across the universe and like do incredible feats and then just die.
It kind of went off the rails pretty quick. I actually found on YouTube, I don't remember how I came across this, but it wasn't, it's fairly old now. It wasn't the new trilogy, but it was the second trilogy with 1, 2, and 3. And this guy basically takes the foundation of the first one, the Phantom Menace, and revamps it into a cohesive story, basically. And I can't recommend this enough because the story that he comes up with is worlds better than what actually happened. And he manages to go through the first 3 movies and remake the story into something that I would genuinely wish those movies actually were instead of what they are. But it's nice to at least have a headcanon alternative to find someone who cared enough to do the characters justice.
I feel like this first one, when it came out, I was so disappointed. I remember it. I was waiting for it. Like, yes, finally, new Star Wars movie. And then when I watched it, I was like, what the fuck is going on? What is this shit? Okay, they were a little bit better, this 2 that came after it, but not much.
I don't know. Hayden Christensen didn't do a lot to make Anakin Skywalker likable. At least when he was a suspiciously young child, he was kind of likable as a character, but suddenly he age jumps about 10 years and then just becomes this really whiny teenager.
Yes. And it's like they never really show this to like when Obi-Wan is telling how great man he was in this original trilogy and these kind of things. They never show it really.
Yeah.
They just show a teenager who is like running around like a headless chicken there.
Yeah, whining because he doesn't get what he wants.
So
he sounds like a spoiled teenager, not a poor teenager.
Yeah.
One of the things that I loved about this guy's version was that he said the Phantom Menace didn't have a main character whose story was being told by these trilogies. You know, A New Hope and 4, 5, and 6, they're telling Luke's story.
Yep.
But they don't really know whose story they're telling, and it should be Obi-Wan's story. So he makes all these changes like that help Obi-Wan become the focus of the story and help him to have a more like organic relationship with Anakin. So the first thing I think they have is that he's not a child because they made him like a young adult and oh goodness, it's been a while since I watched it, but ultimately it becomes kind of this story about Obi-Wan, you know, having this potential to go to the dark side himself, and he creates this web where kind of through Anakin or through Obi-Wan's own journey to not fall to the dark side, Anakin kind of falls to the dark side. And he even included like a pre-romance actually with what's Princess Amidala, I guess. And Obi-Wan he starts them off with a kind of Leia and Han Solo vibe. But it eventually turns into, you know, some bad stuff happening, and Obi-Wan's not in a position to help her. So he kind of sends Anakin to comfort her because she needs someone. And that plants the seed of their relationship, which is even more of a potentially bitter pill for him to swallow, seeing as how that obviously plays out later. And I think the other thing that he did that was really great was Darth Maul doesn't die. He keeps this consistent villain returning to like the guy who murdered his mentor and father figure. You know that when that guy comes back after even getting cut in half, if he comes back with robot legs, they can do that.
The Darth Maul didn't die. It's canon. He comes back with robotic legs.
Well, Luke and Anakin both lose the arm, and they have pretty nice looking fake arms after that, so it checks out.
Yeah, in that universe, you don't die that easily because they seem to have some technologies there.
Yeah. He also had changed Palpatine's position. Palpatine wasn't a senator. Palpatine was like the go-between between the Jedi and the politicians or something. So by changing his role, he had like a more manipulative way to play both sides, I think.
Okay. I have to check this one, actually.
Yeah, I'll send it to you if I can dig it up again. But I've started to really appreciate finding these alternatives. I also found a better ending to Game of Thrones as well.
Well, I think you'll like how they say about this monkeys writing with a typewriters could write better ending to Game of Thrones. It was like absolutely fucking disaster. I haven't read the books because I don't really like his writing style. I read a little bit and I decided, okay, not my thing. But I watched the series. Actually, I started watching it when I had this like pneumonia a few years ago. I couldn't get out from the bed, so HBO to the rescue, and like I started watching Game of Thrones, and I watched it like I think the first few seasons in one go because I had nothing else to do. I was basically just sleeping and watching it. No, then like okay, the beginning was pretty good. It's good. This like how they do this that they kill the main character at the end of the first book, which is pretty good idea. Probably now there's going to be dozens of books that do that also shows some point because it was but then there's like a couple of good seasons in it, and then it goes to this like I remember when I was watching it, I was like, seriously, come on, like I can write better than this. Right. Like, I don't write stories or anything, but still I could do better than this. It's like you forget who the characters are. You make like a plot that doesn't make any sense. You forget that time exists.
Oh God, the warping around that world got just unbearable towards the end.
And it's like suddenly they can move you like thousands of kilometers in a few minutes, and then other times it's like, no, it's far away. We can't do it. Like, what the fuck? And then this battle at this like Winterfell.
Yeah.
We make it dark and this, and then you're like, because we have the best tacticians, then there's like who are still alive there, and then they manage to fumble the whole thing. You're like, It was like really, really bad. Okay, the other battles were really bad also. Some of them. In the beginning, they were a bit better because apparently then they followed like what George had been writing. But then when they got into their own writing, it quickly became a total like.
That was the same feeling for me. I know most people actually like were kind of on board until the last season, but I think as soon as they lost Martin's writing, they went off the rails. And I remember this scene in like Bravos with the assassin girl, like Terminator chasing Arya through the streets. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, this is how assassins fight each other.
Exactly. And then there's like Arya jumping into this cesspool of water there with a wound, open wound. And then just getting back to normal. You're like, back in those days, people usually died when they got a wound like that because of infections.
Yeah, everyone seems to kind of survive a nasty infection there for no real reason.
Yes. This Night King and Arya was also like what.
Oh, yeah, no,
Seriously.
really. I had heard some because, of course, I was so livid that I had gone online and was hearing all of people's different critiques on this. And one of the most interesting ones I think I came across was something that was talking about the difference between subverting expectations and just surprising people. Because subverting expectations is like taking a trope and then leading you to believe that that's what's happening and then flipping it. So you would think Ned Stark has this main character immortality cloak.
Yeah.
Just because otherwise stories don't usually work. But through having all these characters, he was easily able to kill off the main character, and everyone's gonna, of course, hope that if you kill off the main character, his son will rise up and take his place. So axe that guy too. You've completely subverted all of the main character tropes right there, and it's unexpected and it's fabulous. But everyone seems to kind of think that they lost track of what that meant to subvert an expectation, and they just did what was shocking. But in doing that, they were completely abandoning the characters and all of their journeys. I was so mad about Jamie, who had one of the best character arcs in anything, probably, only to just... What was the moral lesson there, that nobody ever changes or grows or becomes better as a person?
Yeah, apparently something like that. I have no idea, because Jamie was like, one thing that I wasn't that unhappy about was Daenerys, because like she showed in the early seasons, she showed that she's gonna go insane at some point. It was shown that she's actually pretty cruel there, and she revels in cruelty. For instance, when her brother was killed, no reaction. Even though it was like a bad character, you're like a bad person. But still.
It's also her only family.
Yes, you should have had some reaction to it, so like some kind of like, but you can see that thing you could see.
Yeah.
Consistent. Of course, it went a little bit like hastened in some point, that you like, she was normal and then suddenly frying everybody.
That was, I think, the real problem for me, is that like, if they had wanted Daenerys to go like full dictator lunatic, I think that arc would have been massively believable if it had been her arc from the beginning, like going through this like leader savior and then kind of getting this god complex that now I'm the only person who can save people. I'm the only person who can lead people. Like, that could have been a really incredible arc, but they just kind of shoved it into about 3 episodes when it should have been in for at least 3 seasons. And
they
oh well.
I think actually the thing is that they wanted to end the series because I think the creators had some other things to do, when it should have still been a couple of seasons more to build the characters properly and not do this like hastened kind of stuff there, or then just cut some plots there just to like make it more simple. That would have been the key also to do it.
Yeah.
But now it was like, and then this was it Ironborn? This what the hell was this called? This married Cersei.
Jamie fought to the death in the end, or
this like this from this island.
was it Euron Greyjoy?
Euron or something. Yes, I think what I understood, that he was like a combined character for a couple of characters in the book or something like this. But that was like really like this. We make a villain that is like, he should have black mustache and you like a hat and this like a cloak, so people can really see that he's a villain. And that was like, come on, build something into this character, not just make him. The actor did a good job portraying complete lunatic, but like even madmen can be like more like subtle in their manipulations, like not showing everything immediately. And this Phantom phantom ships that come out of nowhere suddenly is also like, and then suddenly this that he can shoot the dragon like from a mile away, and nobody else
in
can
one
shoot the
shot.
dragon. Yeah,
And oh god, that moment too when the one dragon gets shot down and she just does an angry loop and then leaves. Like, in what universe would she not burn that fleet to the ground right then and there? And then they go on, the writers go on to say, oh, she forgot about the Iron Fleet. They just killed her dragon. Are you really going to tell me she forgot about them? That's just admitting to bad writing up.
Yeah, and then you're like, after that, you're like on this, was the last episode when she decimates the Iron Fleet with the one dragon easily. So why she didn't
Basically
do
all
that?
of King's Landing.
Yes. So why she didn't do that then? Because we had a couple of episodes left, so we couldn't let her destroy everything immediately.
Yeah, I think it was the kaiju sword from Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim.
Yeah, when the mech had a sword the whole time, and they only bring it out at the end. Like, if you had a mech sword, why weren't you just cutting these things in half instead of punching them the whole time?
Yeah. And like there was also a lot of things there in that movie. Like, maybe you should use better weapons than punching.
Yeah. You've probably got nuclear warheads that you could use. You've probably got all sorts of things. But
was okay. It's also this that the movies would end very shortly if they would use the obvious solution.
Right. You've gotta have some suspension of disbelief for the sake of movies. But movies and shows.
Yeah, sometimes it's just too much. You're like, oh, come on. It's the same like in horror movies when they're always split up. And you're like, they go alone into the house where you can see that the killer is there. You're like, laid traps already. There's like, sign there, welcome inside, traps inside, something like this. And it's like, come on.
Oh.
It's like getting a bit old.
I think that's maybe why I always had a hard time getting into horror movies, is because, especially as someone who likes fantasy and the supernatural and all sorts of weird things, my imagination's a little overreactive sometimes. So horror movies would either be too stupid or too scary, and there was no like middle ground for me to enjoy myself.
I've watched this like the original Japanese one. There's like Ringo and there's like Yuan, this kind of The Grudge, and the Japanese ones are fucking terrifying. You know, like I remember we were like I was studying sound engineering. We were in the dormitory there. We had a hangover day and we watched one of the Japanese versions of it, and like everybody was after that's like, I can't go into my room anymore. The American ones, they like to make it somehow logical. You're like, there has to be some reason why there is bad things happening. But the Japanese one is like, you die. There is no reason. You went to the wrong place at the wrong time, you die. There is no happy ending. There is not this that you escape. Everybody dies.
I think that's kind of an American thing, or North American maybe, if you want to include Canada in there, but like kind of the potential for a happy ending has been criticized as like, what was it? It was like a Jane Austen movie, like Pride and Prejudice or something, where they had to have an American ending that was really like schmutzy, cutesy, whatever, and like all the British people were really pissed off because the Americans need their sugary ending.
Yeah, I understand this, that it's for when you want to sell the audiences like product, it's sometimes not that good idea to make them like very uncomfortable. But then when you're making art or something, which movie should be in some sense, it's sometimes it's good to make people uncomfortable with it. That it makes them think about these things.
Yeah.
That it's not like in life. There is, for many people, there is no happy ending. It's pretty unhappy ending usually. You live, you suffer, and then you die, or something like that.
The truth of it.
Yes. So why are you sugarcoated? Because you need drones to be happy.
Yeah. We need our movies to have happy endings because our lives won't.
Yeah. But that also that gives you like people this like sometimes people like everybody has these opportunities to do this, everybody can do this and that because movies give them the idea. And then well, in real life they don't know how to handle disappointments.
Mm,
Because
very true.
everybody will have disappointments. Things don't always go your way.
Mm.
And even if they do, you sometimes realize that you're like, well, this isn't what I actually wanted. I thought that I want this, but then here I am now, and I'm like, oh fuck, why did I want this?
It applies to so many things too, just because people are always changing and people so much expect not to change. I feel like there's so much, don't try and change people. People never change, but people are always hopefully changing. At least.
Actually change. Yes.
I don't obsessively collect action figures like I did when I lived in Canada because I decided I didn't want to ship 1,000 action figures from Canada to Finland. So
yeah. Well, actually, that was also we had this. You asked me that do I have this like a collection of this nerd stuff, and I had a collection. But when I lived a bit more just like a nomadic style of life, I sold most of them.
Yeah,
because I realized also that it's really not that nice to haul around this like huge amount of collectibles. Of course, they are fun and there's whether you're like, do you really need them? Yes, of course you do. But when you have to carry them around, then it starts to be like, oh, God damn it. Especially if you're like moving to another country. It starts to be a real problem. I lived in Berlin sometime, and you're like, I like got rid of a lot of stuff during that time. Then I came back to Finland. Now I'm trying to think that do I absolutely need these things or do I just want them?
That's what I ask myself.
All the time. Yeah. Usually, well, this COVID year, I usually ask myself, do I have the money to buy this? It's not. That's easier.
That's the poor artist way.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that with Metal de Facto, what I understood was that the plan was for each of the Metal de Facto albums to kind of have a theme, not necessarily like a story. And this is where concept albums get a little tricky to define because there's a few different types. There's kind of what I call there's a story album, which is, like Everfrost, Winter Rider, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then you have like Imperium Romanum, which is more of a conceptual idea that it's based on one thing, but there's no story to it or timeline necessarily. It's just all the songs are set in here. And then you might have something even a little more abstract that the album has like a thread of maybe it's about mental health or something. But so what was it that made you go the way that you did? And is that true kind of that you want each album to have kind of a different subject?
Yes, that is true. Actually, the next album will be from a different subject. It will be a different culture and like their stories told. And I can't really remember. Actually, this like the role theme became from this joke that I made that it's like always Italian bands making like stories from Scandinavian mythology. So we should make like an album from Roman mythology. And then we started to like actually thinking this is actually a pretty good idea, so why not do it? And then we started talking with Sami about this, that we should do this, that like every album has a different theme. That there is it's not all set, but I have basic ideas until album number 7. Like what they're gonna be.
Nice.
It might change. But album number 7 I decided what it will be, and it will be like that. It will be a bit different thing. We'll see how many years it takes to get there, but
I love an extended universe with a pre-plan.
it's good to plan these things. I always thought that like even though a lot of things in the Soviet Union didn't work out that well, they have a good idea of this 5-year plans. Make a 5-year plan, stick to it, and do things that way. Of course, then you get a global pandemic that fucks up everything. But
Naturally.
yeah, but then you can just adjust a 5-year plan a bit, like a 7-year plan.
I was curious because I had thought that maybe your next album was going to be Japan related, but then I realized that you're just doing a cover song for an EP with your Ginga Densetsu Weed. But man, dude, I love that song. I've never actually seen Silver Fang or any of its
it's actually the son of Silver Fang called Weed. And it's from the theme of that anime.
Yeah.
And I remember first time I saw it, I was like, "Fuck, this sounds good." This like a theme song. I need to cover it at some point. That was long time ago when I decided that. And
here you have a vocalist who can actually sing in Japanese.
Yeah, that was a bonus. It was easier that way than having somebody who actually doesn't know what to sing. Then you get this like what word they put there. Love the Finnish one. Finnish is a difficult language, so you get really leery from that one. You said that you wanted to talk about Buffy and Angel.
Oh, yes. You said you've seen Angel. I've seen Buffy, but I have not seen more than one season of Angel. And I was curious if you think it holds up. I kind of ask everyone this because I watched one season and I was so unsure of the way it ended that I wasn't sure I wanted to continue it. And then I tend to, in these situations, I tend to read a little bit because if I read something like a season summary or something, it is a spoiler, but it doesn't spoil things to me in the way that I feel like it spoils for other people. Other people get really upset about like plot points and stuff, but it's weirdly comforting to me. I get strange anxiety in, those like weeks where I have to wait between an episode or something. So if I'm watching something that's already released, like I am now with Battlestar Galactica, I'm really, really having to like lock my fingers shut and not read ahead because I'm in many ways too impatient. But also we're watching it with friends, so I can't watch it every day and just blast through the whole thing.
Yeah.
But so Angel was one of those ones where I was like, time traveling space baby with that terrible person? What?
Yes.
So I was curious if it's better than it sounds.
It is actually. It's better than it sounds. There is not so great moments in it. It's a bit like sometimes a little bit like math. For instance, how Cordelia's character arc is great, actually. How they made her from this like Buffy. They had a good character arc in Buffy also for her, but they continued it in this like Angel. And then in the end, they just snuffed her off. Like apparently there was some like disagreements on the way where the character is going or something like this with the actor and the showrunner, so they just decided to get rid of it. That was like, I remember I was so upset about it. Like, what the fuck? Why do you do this to me? To me personally. But then in the ending, there is they do good this like story run of everything, and they kill off like one of the fan favorite characters there, but still leave her alive basically. But she's dead, but alive, but no, and these kind of things, and also actually the character arc of Wesley is pretty good. How he was this bumbling fool in Buffy, and how he tried to be something cool in the beginning of the Angel, but then how he actually turned out to be in the end. He was actually, it was a good character arc. He became like a real hero in some sense, but also this that he was like a little bit morally ambiguous or something like that. So it was interesting. There was a lot of interesting stuff. And of course there was this like for both Buffy and Angel, there were the comics that came after, and didn't really like those that much. they were okay, but it was like it's not the same magic like it was with the show when you started it from the beginning, like when it started in the late 90s or something.
Yeah. I remember seeing that show a few times when I was younger, and I think it was maybe even the first season episode where Buffy's mom starts like dating a guy and he turns out to be this like crazy abusive cyborg or something like that, or a robot or something.
Hey.
I think that episode scared the absolute shit out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah, I can imagine it. But there was some like pretty just like scary and deep stuff in there sometimes. Like this, how they explored some ideas. There was this one of my favorite episodes. It's like, is it season 4 or 5? Is this? I think this is called Shots or something. This like the episode when this like the gentlemen come into the town and they take everyone's voices so nobody can talk.
Yeah.
And when they have to use these boards to communicate. That was originally actually because Joss Whedon was criticized of this, that he's only just like clever dialogue, that he cannot tell a story. So he decided to take the dialogue away and tell a story without the dialogue.
That's funny.
Basically a big fuck you to all the critics. And that was a great episode, actually. I remember it. Like it was really like, okay, what's going on? The other, like, interesting with sound design point of view, because I'm a sound engineer, is this like the episode where Buffy's mother dies. There is no music in that episode. There is no music at all.
Really?
And that makes it feel actually more real. It's like it becomes very the music doesn't give you the guide how you should feel, because music is often used that you like what you should feel the music tells you about. But this one you have to actually think about it, what is going on the screen, and deal with these characters who are trying to deal with death of a close one.
Yeah. What I think was so great about Buffy was more even than the stories themselves, was really just the characters, because, you know, again, when I was a kid, I just thought Buffy was like this cool, badass girl who punched vampires to death. But, and, you know, watching it fully through as an adult, the amount of emotional, you know, spectrum that they cover in that show was astounding. And one of my favorite things about it was just like that perfect time frame before people started pushing homosexuality to be okay, kind of, where it was like 90s were still pretty homophobic. And I had read a lot about Willow and Tara, that, you know, they weren't meant to fall in love, but their characters just so clearly had this kind of relationship that they just had to let it go there. But of course, they had all these restrictions. But somehow, even through that, I think they managed to make one of the most beautiful gay couples I've ever seen in anything, because there were no stereotypes really back then. At least for gay women, there weren't so many stereotypes. So they always felt to me not like gay girls, but just girls who happened to be gay. You already knew Willow for so many seasons that her gayness wasn't really a thing that defined her. It was just a thing that she
it's actually like this, that the character grew into it. Of course, they hinted about it in this earlier season when there was this evil Willow.
Yeah.
When she was like Willow said, I think I'm kind of gay. But they were talking about the alternative version. But yeah, that was, of course, it's like a sad story anyway, how it ended. How they used it. It was actually really good, the story arc, how they made this evil Willow on this one, that how they used this like a love story. And suddenly when everything is going good, they're reconciling, and you like their differences, and then she dies. Her arms. And then the world goes into hell.
That was so unique to me too at the time, because I had been thinking kind of for the whole season, like the villain of this season is really lame.
Yeah, they even made fun of it in this episode where Buffy
Yeah.
was in a mental asylum thing, that you used to fight gods and there's like demons, and now you're fighting free nerds.
Yeah.
But that
But-
season it was great. This when it was like this that the evil Willow was basically destroying the world,
Mm.
and then she's like telling nobody can stop me, and then suddenly she's down, and like Giles come in and says this like, I would like to test that theory. That was like, whoa, for me, like, okay. I didn't expect him to do that, because he was always like, they made a bit fun of him also, that he can't like fend for himself that well. And then
Yeah.
suddenly he comes back and takes down like somebody that Buffy cannot take down.
Yeah. Yeah. Xander had a great arc in that story as like the heart of the group, or whatever they called him. But it was in WandaVision where his girlfriend from the show had popped up again,
Yes.
and I couldn't
Yes,
think from where I saw her.
in the
Why do I
cornfield,
know?
the actor. Yeah, I remember I was also watching it. Oh my god, it's her. And that was also that they used her as sort of a red herring, because she was this like from Buffy, people know her from there, so
Yeah.
we were expecting something that she was dealing with magic there, so maybe she's something like this. But that was good. But the funny thing about Anya is also this, that she was supposed to die when Buffy died first time also, but the actor moved in the scene, so they had to keep her alive for the rest of the season.
What a random reason.
Yeah. It looks like nobody noticed it when they were shooting it, then they notice it when they're airing it, or basically like this. Okay, well, she is still alive then.
I've heard in some earlier like versions of Lord of the Rings, if you see some like wide shots, you can see like a car driving down a mountain or something at some point. I've never seen them myself, but I've heard rumors.
Well, there might be. I remember in Troy, in this movie, there is like a scene where you can see an airplane. I don't know, maybe they left it. Yeah, but I think maybe they left there on purpose at that point. That it's like, okay, it's a good scene and there's airplane, who cares? It's fun for people to find these things.
Yeah, there's got to be a point where you just have to stop giving a fuck.
Yeah, that's also, you're like, I can imagine it also when you have to go to the actors to tell, hey, by the way, you did a perfect scene, but there was an airplane behind you, so we need to shoot it again.
Is it easier these days to isolate sound and get rid of that stuff than it was? You imagine that technology obviously makes things easier, but
Yeah, there is a way. Of course, it's like sound is easy actually, because they can just do like it's called this like ADR, that you record it after basically the dialogue. That the actors, they come to the studio and they basically act the scene again with just the voice. It's the same like they dub the cartoons. But of course, you like that costs money, so they want to do the sound as good as possible on the field always.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not possible because there are machines that make noise or something like this, so you cannot really like do it there properly. So and you have to go with it. And sometimes the ADR is not a possibility. I did the sound design for one movie once. The main actress, she was like from UK, and the movie production was Swedish, and they didn't have money to fly her over or do the ADR in the UK. So it was basically, we had to do what we got from it, and there was some fuck ups with that recording, and that we were worried, like thinking how to master this thing, and that like everything is fucked up in the sound. There is like digital distortion in the sound, and so like and then it's like this. There was one scene when she's shouting in the rain, like really, that I just made it that the score swells there, and like her scream is cuts away. It's like a dramatic effect in that way.
You gotta have the clever like insider ways to get around things. Like George R.R. Martin, I think, rarely does battle scenes in his books. There's a few, of course, some big scenes like the Battle of Blackwater Bay or something with Tyrion and the wildfire. I think that he described a lot of that battle, but for the most part, he actually has a good sense for where to cut the story to make it kind of an exciting cliffhanger and then go to a different character so that you can kind of skirt around the things that you're not so good at writing. And
yeah, because it's easy to mask it that way that you just, okay, and then you tell what happened. Basically, you tell the results. You don't show the action, but you tell the results. So,
exactly.
Or you like have the characters deal with the aftermath, basically. So that's a good way to do it sometimes. Something in many ways.
Yeah. Well, battles are such a visual thing. They really work in, TV, movies, and things like that. But in books, it, to me, always kind of feels like you're writing, I don't know, a chess game. Kind of like, this guy goes over there and dodges 3 guys and then stabs another. And it almost feels like it's boring to write, even though it's really exciting, and it's somehow boring to read as well. So
yeah, that's actually like I told you about this Wheel of Time that I'm a huge fan of it, the series, and there is this like the last battle there. I think it's about 200 pages of this like description what happens there. Basically, that's a bit much, but of course there's interesting points there because the characters are discovering new things during this, and it's a huge thing. It's like a worldwide thing there, so that's that. And then there's just like the abstract level when they go there, which is, of course, it's still by a different author because the original one managed to die before he finished the story. So another one had to finish it according to his like notes. And well, he knew that he's going to die, so he luckily outlined everything so that another person could finish it. But I think actually Jordan was better at describing this battle than Sanderson was, who finished the book. So that went a bit. You could see that the writer changed at that, and it was a bit like, okay, maybe you should describe it this long, so you could have just like gave us the gist of it. But yeah.
Wheel of Time is an interesting one because I've heard fabulously good things about it, but also like some fairly harsh critiques as well. So what was
I can give you both.
Like I think someone said that at some point they just kind of keep acquiring new characters, but no one ever dies. So at some point you've got like 20 characters running around or something like that.
Yeah, or I can't remember. I counted at some point the plot lines there is, but it's like an insane amount of. And you start forgetting who is who. Luckily, they have this like reference in the end of each book where you can check who was this again. You're like, well, why should I care about his fate? Like, what's happened there, and what is this, and what now? Sometimes there is like it's a bit mess sometimes. This, and also like Jordan went into this that he started to like. I think there's basically 1 book or 2 books without the main character in it, describing just things that happen around him or very little mention of them. But there's also good stuff in there like this, that how they, because it based a lot on these prophecies, so how people like read the prophecies and how they think that it's going to play. And everything matches the prophecy when you look at it, but people there don't understand it, that how it can. As for instance, there is my favorite. Well, the main character is Randall Thorne, the dragon, and he has this prophecy that he's going to be blind and sit on his own grave. Then he can finally see. And then there's like a conquering nation that's coming there. They have this version of the prophecy. They don't have it in the mainland, so they don't know about this one. And what it's actually referring to is this, that Rand is basically reincarnated version of Lance Terry Telemann, who was like living like 5,000 years before or something like this. And he is in the place where his previous incarnation died, and he can finally he comes out from the shadow where he's been a long time, like in this places in a dark place. That he has this like epiphany, that he finally realizes what he needs to do, and he comes in peace with himself. That he's going to do what he's got to do. And this is what they're referring. And then when he's going to meet this empress from the conquering nation, they're like confused at why he isn't blind. Because he was supposed to be blind at this point of time.
Nice.
He's kind of taking it literally. But yeah, they referred it to like in a lot earlier book about this blinding thing. And then you're like, for the reader, it becomes very obvious at this point when he is contemplating the things on his own grave, basically, and then realizing it. But that was like I don't know, Easter egg or something for these fans who read it for a long time, because there's a lot of those in this book. Then there's this like debates who killed who, and I think there are these 13 advocates for this the main antagonist of this story, and one of them is killed by another one. It's described this that he walks in the room and says "you," and then he dies, and nobody knows like who it was and why it happened. You're like, well, why was obvious in some senses, but not like. And then I think it was like 5 or 6 books later, it's revealed like an offhand way that, by the way, when I killed that person, it was like this. People had been guessing it for years who it was and why. You're like, why it went like this, and you're like, what's happening there? And and basically, it didn't have any significance to the story. Actually, it's just like this. The people kept guessing about it. That was a nasty trick from the writer.
Yeah, those have been on my to-read list because one of my best buddies back in Canada is a big fan of those books, and they sound really interesting, but also a bit suspect. It's a big investment, 13 or 15 books or something.
15, yes. And they are not small books, they are long, and it can be sometimes like this that you're like, oh, come on, get with the story, get on with the story. There's like, you could cut like 5 books away from the story and it wouldn't change much. But that's also, there is merits to it, that it's like building long time, this thing. Of course, the stereotypes are sometimes, you're getting really annoyed with them, how they are. There's like the gender stuff in there and this kind of things.
Mm.
I think there was actually funny that it was George Martin who wrote this, that they had this like fantasy battles who would win against who.
Suvudu, was that Jaime Lannister and Randolph R?
Yes, it was.
I remember.
Yeah, they had to amp a little bit Jaime because he would have nothing against Rand in normal battle, because Rand is on the level of a demigod.
And wasn't it also like post hand getting cut off Jaime as well?
Yeah, but Rand also lost his hand. So,
okay.
But it was good writing from George, actually, how he imitated Jordan's writing on this one. I was like impressed by it. But one thing that pissed me off on that one a lot was this, that how Jaime and like George basically on his blog and whatever was this, that like he was making a point out of this, that Rand was like a country boy, and how can he be that good with the sword how he is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's a reincarnation of a guy who was like practicing sword fight for hundreds of years. So of course he's fucking good at it. He's like a real master on it. And Jaime was also like in the story wondering how this country boy can be so good. And George wrote about it in somewhere. And I was like, did you even read the books? Like, do you even understand what it is about? Come on, it's a reincarnation of someone else who is actually good with it. He has a lot of, he has his memories even, and this kind of thing. So of course he's like with the swords at the same skill level at some point. That's why they made a point out of it, that like everybody was wondering why he learned so fast. Well, that was the reason why he learned so fast.
Yeah.
God damn it.
I remember somehow the final battle of that being kind of ridiculous, but really entertaining because the way they had explained how Jaime Lannister would defeat Cthulhu was really funny because Jaime had like Tyrion as his like brains with him, and then Tyrion discovered that Cthulhu's asleep, so all they had to do was like kill the cultists who were trying to summon him, and if you kill the cultists, then Cthulhu is never summoned. He never shows up for the battle, and Jaime wins by default.
Yeah. There's like weird ones in those. It was also this. Well, if you talk about this battle between Rand and this like Jaime, it was. I would disagree on this end result because there was like fundamental errors in George's understanding of this. For instance, how balefire works. Because there is no defense against balefire in the books. It destroys everything. And okay, in the final battle there in these books, they found a way to counter it. But that was then, and it was like really resource consuming. The character who figured out the way to counter it died in the process. So
the who would win fights are really ultimately more of a popularity contest in the end.
Yeah, they are. Well, but there's like also this like who would win. I read a lot about this like a quarter when I have time because it's interesting to read people's answer to people's questions because you can learn a lot about humanity there.
It's true.
Good and bad things, but there is a lot of these questions there: who would win this or that, and that against that, and you're like, and it gets really messy there usually because, of course, it's like every character have their fanboys and they're telling that because of this and that, and you're like this, and they're usually referring. For instance, with Marvel heroes, there's so many versions of each one of them, so it's like impossible to beat them against each other.
Oh, that was one of the things I really liked in Age of Ultron was when they were all sitting around trying to lift Thor's hammer. It felt like such like a reference to the nerd fights.
Yes.
Like, what if you put it in the elevator? The elevator's not worthy.
Yes. Yeah, that was like exactly like this discussion somehow. And then can Hulk lift it if Thor is holding it? Yes, there's a picture actually of Hulk hitting Thor in the face with Mjolnir when Thor is holding it. So I suppose that was answered to that in some comic, but
it was a great moment in Endgame too when Steve Rogers picks up Mjolnir and Thor just shouts, "I knew it!"
Yeah. Well, like there is reference to that in the comics also that Steve Rogers has been wielding Mjolnir. But it was nice that they did it there in the movie, that they showed that, okay. I think it was actually a good reference to the first Avengers movie. Is this that Steven, like Tony, are having this argument. And Tony said that everything special about you came from a bottle. And Steve is telling Tony that you're not like into sacrificing anything. And then in the final movie, they both showed that they both were wrong.
Yeah.
Tony sacrificed himself, and Steve was apparently a bit special because he could lift Mjolnir.
Yeah. I love that. Steve Rogers was one of those really interesting characters, I think, in the MCU in general, because his movie, like the first Captain America, wasn't particularly good.
Well,
it wasn't very entertaining.
Yeah.
But the characters were good. Like Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes were all good characters. It was just the movie itself, the setting, the villain weren't that good. I was glad to see that Peggy Carter, the show, I only watched one season. I don't know if it went on, but that was quite entertaining. So I had enjoyed seeing more of Peggy Carter after that one movie when then it skips ahead 80 years or something.
Yeah. 80 or 70, I can't remember how many, but yeah, sometime. Yeah, that's actually true that the first Captain America movie wasn't that great. But the funny thing for me was that I never liked Captain America in the comics. I think he thought that he was a boring character. He was like this, like too much of
Goody
this.
two shoes, kind of.
Yeah, and this like, I have the shield and I'm the peak of human thing, and it's like then he's there in the middle of the gods, and basically he should have died in the first moment. but then when I watched this, actually the MCU, they managed to make it so that I finally understood this, that what he's actually all about. It's like this, that he never gives up. He's always like, he is like, his body can break, but his mind won't break. He will continue as long as there is something left in him to continue. It gave me like a new respect for the character, because I noticed actually in the comics he's the same, basically. That he is, there's, well, in this original Infinity Gauntlet, when Thanos has slaughtered basically all the heroes, the only one that's left is Steve, Captain America. And Thanos says that, are you serious that you're coming against me? And then Steve is like, I'm the only one left, so what can I do? As long as I stand, there's somebody opposing you.
Yeah,
that was like, because I don't know if you read the Infinity Gauntlet ever, this comic.
only like summaries of it.
Yeah, but there is this like moment there. The funny thing is that basically Adam Warlock sent the heroes to get slaughtered because he knew that there is like nothing they can do about it. And his plan was this, that the Silver Surfer snatches the gauntlet off from Thanos, because he can move faster than light, so he can be there before he can react. And that fails.
Naturally.
And then shit hits really, like, shit hits the fan really at that point. But it's a good story. It's worth reading into it, but of course it's very pompous or something like this. It's like, it gets funny at this like monologues what they're having there. It's like hilarious stuff. And the heroes also like there's like how they're writing the characters. It's funny mostly. It makes you mostly laugh when they're trying to do this like rousing speeches of everything.
Product of their time, surely.
Yeah, I suppose so. I can't remember that much of this nowadays in the Marvel comics, at least. I don't read them that much anymore. Of course, I read some of the stuff. I read this King in Black, which came out now, and now this new Spider-Man stuff also. Been reading it. Can't remember. I was reading something. Mostly, I actually read old Marvel comics. I try to remember, like, how did we get here? At some point, it started to get this that I didn't like the art anymore after 90s that much because it became, it's like not that great anymore, and there were some really shitty artists, for instance, in this various X-Men continuities. I remember this Executioner's Song, which was a great story, but there was some of the art was like this, that it was almost unreadable. It was so bad. It was like, of course, they were searching for this, that some artists with unique style, but sometimes unique style is not that good if it becomes like this, that it's like, what the fuck is this shit reaction? I think actually Executioner's Song was one of the last things that I read. Then I had a long pause in this, because after that I was like, okay, the stories went a bit like, nah. At that point it became like this, that they started publishing this like new series about every character all the time, which is basically this, it's, how to put it nicely, money grabbing thing.
Yeah.
You need to have new these like different comic books every now and then. There's this and that. And it's like, it's difficult to follow the story when you have to find, okay, where does it actually continue? I need to get this one, read this one and that. Okay, now it's a bit easier when you can like basically order them online and you can have access to all of them. So then it's a bit easier to follow them. But back in those days, it was like a real pain in the ass. And sometimes it's that when they published them in Finland, they skipped some of the stuff from it. So the story they got a bit confusing sometimes. For instance, I never remember the Secret Wars, the original one. I never remember seeing the first is like the first magazine of it, the series. I don't know, maybe they published it in British, but I never saw it. I saw that I had all of them, but then you like when I read the American one, the US one, I was like, oh, there's one more of this in the beginning. Well, they explained the plot pretty well there in this, like what I was reading, but still, I thought it was a bit rushed. But then it was like, oh, okay, now it makes more sense.
Cutting things can be problematic, to say the least.
Yeah, it can be this, like, it's sometimes a bit difficult to follow the story if you don't have all the parts.
It's actually kind of ironic about Game of Thrones, because I had read, like, long before that show was ever a thing, that the reason George R.R. Martin had written so many of these different characters and story arcs into his story is because he had done television beforehand, and he was annoyed at how many characters and arcs had to just get cut to fit in the time frame of a TV show or whatever. So this is kind of where that came from. And in the end, instead of cutting characters, they just cut story. So was it better? Maybe not.
Looks like not. Yeah, that's just, it should be like story first and then characters even.
That would be nice. If Hollywood wasn't so obsessed with money and explosions.
Oh yeah, money and explosions. And there's like, I was just reading about this. Now every studio is trying to start this like a franchise like MCU. Because they saw that it can be like they're making this like billion. But they, for instance, what DC never understood in this movie part. Yes, you need to build the characters. You can't just go straight into this.
Yeah,
and you can't. You are behind Marvel, so you cannot. Just try to get even with them. It doesn't work very well. I have to say, I understand why people like Snyder Cut, for instance, this Justice League, but I don't think it's a good movie, even Snyder Cut. It's like, and I don't understand this, why people are so excited by Snyder's like this, because, for instance, this Batman versus Superman thing, you're like, that was absolute shit. It was really like fucking disaster. Snyder has like really many more misses than hits.
Yeah.
So why people were so excited. I watched this like a Snyder Cut when it came out, and I was like, yeah. Okay. It's like, it's longer, makes a bit more sense. Okay, they introduced this like a villain. You could see that they were trying to go this MCU route, that they're gonna have this like a big bad at the end of it, but still it was like, oh, come on.
We put off watching Aquaman for the longest time because we knew it was going to be trash. And truly, the best part of that movie was just watching Khal Drogo run around being ridiculous. I don't know, there's something about what is that actor's name? I'm having a brain fart right now. But
Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa. There's something that I just like about him that you don't see it in Game of Thrones, because he plays this cold, harsh dude. And to see him just being so campy in that movie was utterly ridiculous. But the story was trash. Truly. It was the most predictable, boring thing I've ever seen.
I haven't watched it. I'm probably not going to watch it ever. I think I tried to watch it once when I was drunk, and like I stopped at some point. Like, okay, this is unwatchable.
If you can't even watch it when you're drunk, don't watch it.
Yeah. It was almost the same with this, like Batman versus Superman thing. Come on. And Man of Steel also is like, it's not a very good movie either. So you're like, all of these Snyder movies in this franchise, they weren't good, and then they were expecting him to save somehow this movie that this actually Warner executives fucked up. So no.
Did he also do Suicide Squad, or was that someone else?
I think that was someone else.
Suicide Squad was a mess too.
Yeah, it was a mess. I think it was actually. I don't blame that much of these directors of this for it. I think it's more about this Warner's meddling with it because they want to have the same money making machine like Marvel has.
Yeah.
They want to have this a big franchise of it, and then they fuck up everything with this because they go and meddle with this artistic vision of the people who are trying to make it, and usually that doesn't end that well. Of course, probably there has been cases in the movie history that where it ended better. That's there. I can't remember any at the moment. Probably there is.
Well,
I'm
really,
quite sure.
Yeah, it really shows in the DC universe that they it's super derivative. It wasn't their idea, and they didn't know how to execute it. Because Marvel was always teasing the next movies from even Iron Man 1, and they had kind of planted the seeds so far back that DC was just kind of making a movie and then with the next movie almost trying to tie the last one in instead of paving the way forward.
Yeah.
So, and then everything got messed up in the cuts and Warner's interference and whatnot. So everything just kind of seems like it was done for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it feels like that they didn't think of this a long run. Really, they thought that when we do a couple of hit movies, we will have a franchise. It's like this. It's like from Wayne's World. This, if you book them, they will come.
Yeah,
but it didn't work that well for them because they didn't have a plan. They
people
were trying.
Are dumb, but they're not that dumb.
Yeah, and of course, they made a lot of money with those movies. Still, I don't think any of them were actually commercially failures. If you think about that way,
yeah,
well, they made profit with all of them. But the thing is that they could have so much more because I think at least in the US, I suppose DC characters are really well liked.
Yeah,
really popular. And it's sometimes hard for me to understand it from here because Marvel was more dominant. DC was considered to be for kids here. So for me, it's difficult to see this. Okay, I've read this DC comics. There's classics of their Death of Superman and these kind of things. I still think it's some of it. It's just there's good stuff in there, but it's difficult for me to get over this feeling that DC is for kids and Marvel is for other people. But it's I suppose it's my own attitude problem in it more. And of course, it doesn't help when I see these Batman fans who are always shouting about this, that he has time to prepare, he can defeat anyone. It's there's a guy with a bat suit with literal gods again. He's fucking toast. It doesn't matter how much prep time he has.
Yeah.
But he's so intelligent. Yes, and so no, I suppose in universe he is, but still, and he has planned for everything. It's yes, great, but
that just sounds like Sherlock Holmes to me.
Yeah, it is a bit like this. I think it's this, a fantasy of this that they identify themselves with the character, so it's the character has to be good in everything. Because it's ideal version of their self-image in there, which you're oh, but nobody can be like that. But it would be nice to be like this, that you can deal with any situation.
That I haven't really read any Batman, but there's a lot of main characters like Harry Potter, for example, who don't have kind of huge personalities on their own. It's the adjacent characters that have bigger personalities. And that's apparently because it's easier to have a bit of a flatter main character so that people can project themselves onto this character. Do you think Batman is like that at all?
I haven't read it enough also to make this kind of a thing. I've read some of the stories and
feel like anyone
Maybe-
could be Batman if their parents died.
yeah, something like that. Of course, you did still need like
Billionaire parents.
billionaire parents, and there's that you have to have this billionaire fortune.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it was, even though it's a stupid line in this Justice League movie, there's still like, what is your superpower? I'm rich. Well, that's basically Batman. He's rich and smart. And I suppose that's the things that people
That's just
would
Tony
like.
Stark,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah,
Tony Stark
yeah.
kind of did it cooler.
Yeah, but yeah, Tony Stark is a bit cooler in that sense. He also loves his parents, actually. There's a lot of yeah,
Rich-
there's actually a lot of this they have in common. The characters both like to build things and both have these kind of things. But of course, Marvel and DC, there's so many characters there are obvious copies of each other. And they have it both. Well, that was the thing that they were doing back then. It worked for both of them. I think actually when they have this couple of these, I think it was called Amalgam Comics, when they merged Marvel and DC for this one-off. That was actually interesting and pretty funny stuff what they had there. Yeah, they had this, like, they also answered these questions there that you like, who would win if Thor would fight Superman and this kind of stuff. And they made it actually somehow, they managed to made it a story that you can actually read, that it wasn't like complete utter nonsense. But
that could be why I've never really found the interest in these debates, because for me, especially as a storyteller myself, who would win is less interesting to me than why would these two fight in the first place.
yes, that's the thing. For instance, for me, it's the same. For instance, why would Superman and Thor fight? They're on the same side. They're like basically on a situation where they shouldn't be fighting.
Yeah.
They probably have the same goal.
And
So-
therein lies kind of the problem with Batman versus Superman. Wasn't the reason that they were fighting kind of dumb?
Well, yeah, it was like this like godlike creature came down and you like fought with other godlike creatures and caused this like damage there. I must kill him because he can become a threat. It's like yeah.
That
You
just
can.
never doesn't seem like a super Batman-y thing to me to do. I don't know.
And then this fucking Martha thing stopped it. That was like,
Really? What?
like it really ran out of ideas,
Yeah.
apparently, how to stop the fight.
We didn't know how to make this make sense, so we found anything that made sense.
Yeah. So, whoa, you have this, you're like, your mom was also Martha. We should totally be friends.
Absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, that was like, why? Like, there should be somebody like there to tell the writer or director, whoever decided this, like, what? Come on, no.
You really have to wonder sometimes how some of these things get past a certain point where everyone's like, yeah, I guess this is okay.
I suppose this is like this, to like what I understood also when I'm writing music. You sometimes fall in love with your own ideas, even though they don't work.
Hmm.
And then you just want to make it work somehow. And then you think that, okay, now it's kind of works. So it's like that. And then it's like,
It's true. When I get stuck writing, sometimes it almost comes from overthinking something where I'm like, gosh, I wrote this when I was, 12 years ago or something. Does this still make sense? Is this still the most logical path? And then I start kind of trying to think of other paths or other ways, or what are the things that people are going to fault in this logic, and how can I avoid them? Only to just come back around and realize that the idiotic idea that I had when I was 15 actually makes the most sense.
yeah, you should also this step. I've learned it sometimes when I'm doing my work and I'm trying to protect, for instance, sound system from idiots, and like is that you like I'm not meaning the sound engineer, but there's like customers who come there, and it's like you can never underestimate them how stupid people can be sometimes, what they can do. And that's the thing, that if I would write about that, nobody would believe it, because it's like, oh, nobody would do that.
Yeah.
And like yeah, but this is the real life, and that happens.
Yeah, I know Patrick Rothfuss got a lot of crap from in his second book. He introduces a culture who do not believe that humans reproduce sexually. They believe that women simply come to fruition when the time is right, and it's like explained that like sex is very casual. It's not like very romantic in their culture. So if everyone's fucking everyone, then yeah, sometimes some people look like other people and sometimes they don't and whatever. But he got so much crap from that. And I think if you look through history, you'll actually find plenty of tribes that might even to this day still not believe that humans reproduce sexually. So it's not that big of a stretch. I have so many bigger problems with other things in his stories than that. So
yeah, I think actually in that one, the problem that these people have with it is actually moral one, not the storytelling one. Because it attacks their morality in that sense. It doesn't attack anything, but in their head, it attacks their morality, and that's why they need to find something wrong with it. But they cannot admit to themselves that it's actually this morality thing, so they will try to find like this excuse there that, oh no, this cannot happen. But that's also the good thing about these books, because everybody like sees it through their own background. So they can find there things that they approve or disapprove, that at least hopefully sometimes makes them think. Hopefully.
Yeah. That's the main thing. The main thing for art, hopefully, is to help people think. But you never know. It's getting to be a harder world to get people to think.
Yeah, because there's like this people that want to think because they live in echo chambers with people with the similar ideas. So it's easy to be like that. You don't get exposed to the ideas of the people who think differently.
Yeah.
Or if you do, you get angry because feelings.
Yeah.
And I have right to feel this way. Yeah, of course you do. Nobody said you don't, but
Also
you can also like sometimes think about it, why you feel that way.
It often interests me, I suppose, that people are so interested in being angry. Like, I could be angry all the time very easily if I wanted to be, but that would be exhausting. I'm already exhausted enough with depression and being an artist. I don't need any extra hate on top of me to make it worse.
That's true. I also never understood this, why people want to get angry about everything. I suppose they have something in their life that they are not happy about it. I have no idea. Just guessing.
That's for the psychologists. We're just the artists.
Yeah.
We can only talk about our feelings.
Yeah. But I was thinking that it probably has to do with this, that people are not happy with their situation, so they have to like vent the anger somewhere. And usually it's like people who are using targets get the anger. It's not my duty. It's my duty to make people angry.
There you go. Make them angry, make them think.
Yes.
I love it. Well, we have been at this for about 2.5 hours now, so perhaps before we switch into philosophy, maybe we can wrap this up. Is there anything that you would love to shout out? Something that you think people should really check out, or anything that's new that you think people might not have heard about yet that our fellow nerds out there might like to hear about?
Well, the thing is that I'm always a few months after everybody election because I don't follow the trends that well. But I think actually there's this one comic book that people should check. It's called this like Uber or something. It's about this that on the last moment in Nazi Germany, they managed to create like superhumans in their army, and they turned the tide of the war basically on the last days of the war, how we saw it.
Okay.
And then it goes into this that also the other powers are trying to get these superhumans also, and they found a way to do it, and everything goes to shit. There's basically pictured how Stalin dies, how Hitler dies, how Churchill dies, and all of it's connected to these like superhuman humors. And it's a still ongoing series actually, but it's not concluded yet. But it started like I can't remember a few years ago. And that's something that people should check. I remember the artist got complaints about this, that it's like, oh, Nazis supporting and white supremacist stuff, but it's not actually. It's just storytelling about this, that how far people can go. I think it's more critical about this. Like, it's actually criticizing all of these superpowers, what they're doing, how they're just using these people, that they find these people, they make them weapons, and then just use them for each one for their own ideology.
Kind of like an arms race, but with people.
Yes, basically, it's actually. I think it has this like some sort of like a parallel with the real world with the nuclear arms race, but it's just that the people were the weapons. They have actually nuclear weapons in this one also, and there is this where they hit one of these super persons with a nuclear weapon, that kind of stuff, and how it affects them, and how they manage to kill the unkillable ones, and blah blah blah. It's like, it's interesting. It's like you have to like really think about a lot of times when you're reading. It's not very pleasant reading that for many times. It's actually pretty gory and pretty like this, that it makes you think that okay, the moral ideas of this, that you like how you can make this like human experiments, and how people volunteer into those because of their countries being destroyed, so they want to help, what they do with them after that, and how they're just using them. And it seems interesting read. I suggest it to people.
Sounds pretty heavy.
Yeah,
in a good way.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I would like to comment. I can't think of anything else at the moment. Of course, like after we're done, I'm like, yes, this one.
All right, then my last question for you then is, if you were to out someone else as a geek to tell them to come on the show, are there any other musicians out there who you think I could get away with unveiling as geeks?
Petri from Answer. He's a huge Star Wars fan. So I could out him, but he's pretty out with that stuff, so you don't out him, but he is a huge fan of Star Wars.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know it's not a short conversation.
Oh yeah. But it's nice to have this like long talks about these things sometimes.
Yeah. A little different from the normal interviews that we're usually doing, right?
Yeah, there's I have this like I don't know if I should tell this, but I have the answers for basic interviews like on the file where I can just take them. Because there's a lot of same questions, but this is like, of course there's some really good interviews. Sometimes you get surprised where people find out this stuff about what you said 20 years ago, and then it comes to bite you in the ass. But I have to say about these things that like when people find out about stuff, my personally weirdest thing was this: when I was mixing Korpiklaani, we went to Russia with Dreamtale, which I played like ages ago. And when we come to the venue, and there's a guy there, he immediately comes to me and asks for an autograph. I'm like, you're probably one from Korpiklaani, guys, because like I'm not in a band. No, he takes a Dreamtale album and gives it to me. And I'm like, how do you know that I'm here? You're like, they advertise it that their mixing engineer used to play with the support band, usually, like everywhere. But somehow they knew that. I was like, okay, how?
Mild.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, and I'll let you get on with your evening.
Thank you. And thanks for this one. It was nice to have this.